One day, I got stuck in the middle of the desert in a small town in the middle of rural Nevada. There were barely any people there. It's a very small city in the middle of nowhere. Pretty scary, right? I was definitely scared, and I barely made it out. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English on Autopilot. Today, I'm bringing you a story from when I was a freshman in college. I was 18 years old, and it was spring break. It was spring break, and I was going home to surprise my mom and sister for their birthdays. Both of my mom and sister have the same birthday, and it was right it was the first weekend of spring break. It was perfect. I thought this is excellent. So I talked to my dad. I planned it. I was going to drive from Las Vegas to Carson City, and it should be no problem. I've done that drive many times, and we didn't say anything to my mom and sister. We kept it quiet because it was supposed to be a big surprise. So, as soon as I finished my final midterm exam, which are the exams in the middle of the semester, I took my Spanish midterm exam. I hopped in the car and I set off for Carson City. No problem at all. I had some good music, a few podcasts to listen to, and I was enjoying my drive. Now, the drive's about 8 hours in total, which in the United States is not that bad. And so I'm listening to my music, I'm listening to my podcast, I'm having a good time. I have coffee, I have water, I have some snacks. Everything's good, everything's great. Now, from Las Vegas to Carson City, there's about three cities in between them during that 8 hour drive because the middle of Nevada is desert. There's not much else. It's basically barren desert. There's rocks, there's cacti, there's sand, a lot of sand, and a two-lane highway. Cars going up north and cars coming to the south. That's it. It's not a very safe drive either because there's big semi trucks and passing them is not very easy and it can be quite dangerous. Well, the beginning of the trip was no problem. I stop in the first city, get a little gas, put some gas in my car, and continue my drive. At this point, though, it was probably about 4 in the afternoon, and I noticed there's a lot of clouds. There's a lot of clouds coming in. And I'm getting close to a city called Hawthorne, Nevada. Hawthorne, Nevada is exactly in the middle of the 2 points, Las Vegas and Carson City, about 4 hours either way, right? So it was about 4 o'clock. It was perfect. I was going to get home about 8 o'clock and surprise my mom and sister. However, I go through Hawthorne. Hawthorne is a very small city. The only thing that's really in Hawthorne is a military base and some secret stuff as well. Don't worry, we'll get into that in another video. But there's a big military base, and other than that, the city itself is very small. There's a few motels, not hotels, motels, which are only 2 stories max. And they're very small, they're also very American. There's one or two restaurants, there's a McDonald's, there's two gas stations, I think, and that's really it. Hawthorne is an extremely small town. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. And I get through Hawthorne, and as I'm leaving, I see the worst thing you can imagine on a long car ride: traffic. A ton of cars lined up, a ton, a ton, a ton. And eventually I stop because once I reach the last car in the line, there's nowhere to go. And I start to see a lot of cars coming back the other way. So I call my dad. I call my dad. And I say, uh-oh, there's a lot of traffic. I might be home a little after 8, but I'll let you know. We start advancing a little bit at a time, little by little. And eventually, I see a police officer that's walking and talking to each car. He's stopping at each car to talk to them. Finally, the officer reaches my car and I roll down the window and he explains that a semi truck has flipped over, has flipped over on the highway just in front. Now, when you're getting out of Hawthorne and you're heading up north towards Carson City, you go around a lake. There's a big lake, and the highway is on a cliff. It's a cliff. So the other side goes straight down towards the lake. Now, Walker Lake is known for fishing, things like that. It's not an amazing lake, it's not super beautiful, but it's quite big. And of course, you have to go around it to get to Carson City. The truck flipped over on the part of the highway right next to the cliff. A big problem. Thankfully, it didn't go over the cliff, but it was blocking both lanes, so you couldn't go towards Hawthorne and you couldn't leave Hawthorne. He recommended that I turn around because he said it could be anywhere between 10 to 16 hours for them to get the highway back open. Now, normally trucks don't flip over at that in that stretch of the road. Normally, it's no problem. It's a little nerve wracking because, of course, you're on a cliff, but it's normally no problem. However, just before I reached Hawthorne, it had started to snow, and in Hawthorne it was snowing, and as you went up north, it was snowing a lot. So the roads were a little icy, which means they were slippery, and because of that, the driver lost control and the truck flipped. So I turned around because all the cars we had to turn around. There's nowhere to go, and you weren't going to sit in your car for 10, 12, 16 hours. Of course not. And I call my dad. I didn't want to go back to Vegas because then I drove 8 hours that day, and then what? The next day I drive 8 hours again. It's a lot of driving. And he recommended, don't worry, just stay at a motel and leave in the morning. Now, motels are not known for being amazing. They're normally older, a little dirty, they're cheap, but they're not great places to sleep. And a lot of people had the same idea. So, the most popular motel, by the time I got there, I talked to the receptionist at the front desk, and she said there's no more rooms. I go to the next motel, there's no more rooms. And finally, I go to this little motel at the edge of the city, and they say, we have some rooms left, but not here. It's a separate building down the street. Oof, okay. But it was cheap. I think it was 25 or $30 for that night. Now, not ideal, but okay, that's fine. And I get there, and the room is tiny. It's also very dirty. The bathroom, I don't even want to talk about. Stains everywhere. It's horrible. And the walls were paper thin. You could hear everything happening in the room next to you, and in the room on the other side, you could hear everything. There was only maybe 6 or 7 rooms in this building total, and mine was right in the middle. And I was not looking forward to spending the night there. The bed did not look clean, it did not look inviting, but I said, you know what? It's one night, it'll be fine, we'll make it. It's fine. But by the time I finally got in the room and settled in, I was very hungry. And so I needed to go to dinner. Now, I looked on Google Maps to see the restaurants in the city. One was right across the street. It was a barbecue restaurant. And I thought, you know what? Barbecue sounds good. And it's pretty hard to make bad barbecue. And I look out the window because it says it's right in front of the street. And there was only a trailer. And I realized that trailer was the restaurant. And I thought, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not the best choice. And so I went to the restaurant, the other restaurant in the city, the diner. Now, when I walked into the diner, Everyone there, all the people eating, did this, turned their head and looked at me as if they knew I was not from there. They knew I was the outsider. Whew. It made me shiver a little bit and was not a comfortable feeling. And it made me quite nervous. But I needed to eat. I needed to have dinner. So the waitress, not very happy, she sat me down at a table and I ordered. I forget what I ordered, but whatever it was, she said I could use the salad bar. I could go get a plate, make myself a salad. Well, I looked at the salad bar and it was not appetizing. The vegetables looked old. The lettuce, I don't even know if it could still be considered lettuce anymore. So I decided, you know what, tonight I'm going to be a little naughty. Tonight I'm going to skip the salad. And it was probably the right choice. Now, the dinner, like I said, I don't even remember what I ordered. I think it was some sort of meat with potatoes, something like that, something safe. Not terrible. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't very good. It wasn't the best thing I've eaten, but it was edible. I had dinner, I was satisfied, and I went back to the room. Okay, now it's starting to get dark. And it's a little scary because in the desert, in a small city like that, when it gets dark, especially because we're talking about March, so it's the beginning of spring, end of winter, it still gets dark early. And it got dark. And then it's still snowing. And on my phone, I keep checking the status of the highway because I tell myself, as soon as it opens up, I'm leaving. I don't care. I'm leaving. My mom at this point knew because my dad and I knew we had to tell her. I was staying in Hawthorne. She needed to know, and she was obviously very worried. And I talked to my parents. We talked on the phone after dinner. I said, you know what? It's all good. I have my room. I'm going to watch a little TV. And tomorrow I'll leave. I'll keep checking, but at this point, it's dark, and neither of them wanted me to drive. Well, I turn on the TV. I was watching a hockey game. I remember I was watching a hockey game and pretty relaxed, kept checking the status. And then I started to hear some noise from the room next to mine. People talking. And then people arguing and people shouting. And all of a sudden, I started to get very nervous because they were yelling. And it was a man and a woman. I don't know if they were a couple or friends or whatever it was, whether they were boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or just friends. I had no idea. But the fighting was getting intense. Someone left. I hear the door slam, and I'm like, oof. But before they get in their car, I hear from outside because, again, paper thin walls. I'll be back. You don't want to see what I'm going to do. And I thought, oh my goodness. I don't want to see what you're going to do. I was very nervous, right? I was very scared. I didn't know what to do. I was 18. I had no idea what to do. And then about 11 o'clock at night, that was probably at 9, 11 o'clock, I'm checking my phone. I'm like, please, please, open the freeway. I'm leaving as soon as it's open. It opened back up. And I called my parents and I said, I'm leaving. They understood. Even though it was dark, even though it was still snowing, I said, look, I'm going to drive slow. I'm going to drive safely, but I need to get home. And they said, no problem. Before I left, I went to the gas station, filled up on gas. I wanted to have all the gas possible. I did not want to make another stop. The only other city before Carson City is again in the middle of nowhere. It's very small. It is not, there's not much there. I did not want to get out of my car again. I bought a big coffee and I left. I drank my coffee and I drove in the snow and in the dark, and I felt safer driving than I did at the motel. I really, at one point, I was very scared. I had no idea if I was going to make it out alive. Of course, it wasn't that bad. But when you're young and when you're in that situation, it's very scary. It's very, very scary. Luckily, it was all good. Luckily, I made it out alive. I'm here to tell this story. and I learned that Hawthorne, Nevada is a place I don't think I'm gonna live. I don't think I'm gonna move to Hawthorne, Nevada. Well, you never know. The meat and potatoes wasn't too bad. Nah, no, I don't think so. I think I'm okay not living there. Everyone, let me know. Have you ever gotten stuck in a city that you didn't mean to be stuck in? Put it in the comments below. Also, let me know, what would you have done if you were in my situation? Would you have spent the night, or did you think or do you think that I did the right thing by leaving? Put it in the comments. Okay, everyone, if you enjoyed this story of me being scared for my life, please put a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can keep watching these videos as they come out. And we will see each other in the next video. Bye.